What's going on, guys? Andrew Piluk Hockey here, back again with another video. Today we're going to be talking about Johnny T. Mr. Johnny T. You can see him right behind me right there. Man, I can't point to the right way. If you guys are new here, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Join the squad. Love to have you guys here. Thank you guys so much for stopping into another Andrew Piluk Hockey video. I greatly appreciate it. But we need to talk about Johnny T. We need to talk about the guy that passed on the captaincy to Austin Matthews, who became the 26th captain in franchise history, and the 25th captain of the Maple Leafs will be a free agent after this season. And Johnny T and Mitch Marner coming off the books clearly would save the Leafs a lot of money, but it would make them lose two of the best players that this franchise has ever seen. And I know there's so many people typing up their keyboard warrior comments right now talking about Johnny T, but today I'm going to be defending John Tavares because, look, there's the good and the bad, and the bad is clearly the contract. And I'm not a GM. I don't have the money to sign a guy like this, but we have to walk you through the entire situation. So please, what I would ask from you guys is let's have a constructive conversation here. Let's not have you're a moron, he makes too much money. I know he makes too much money, but we're going to walk through the whole situation. So if we're starting from the beginning, right? When we signed Johnny T, everybody was very excited. John Tavares coming to Toronto, one of the biggest free agents that's ever stepped foot on free agency, leaving the Islanders, the team that drafted him, to go to his hometown team and play for the Maple Leafs. Now, if you go back and you remember what happened in that free agency, there were teams offering him $13 to $14 million. And by teams, I mean definitely the San Jose Sharks. The San Jose Sharks were a team that were willing to pay him over $13 million to come and play for the Sharks. Now, that must have been enticing, but the Maple Leafs technically got a discount at $11 million. And he came in and he played great. Like, we got to just not forget the numbers that this guy was putting up right away for the Maple Leafs. And that included like 40 goals. Like, people forget that this guy was really, really good for the Maple Leafs and still is. The guy's still on the team, but we got into the COVID years, and that's where the contract looked really bad. And again, people are like, oh, every team went through the COVID times and blah, 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 blah. Teams that could barely spend to the floor for the cap, teams that weren't trying to win, it didn't have any effect on them because they weren't spending money in the first place. They weren't trying to win in the first place. It did not have the same effect on them as it did for contending teams. And a lot of contending teams got themselves in a lot of trouble, and the Maple Leafs were one of those teams. They spent thinking that, okay, the cap right now, currently in 2024, would be well over $100 million, probably closer to 110 than what it's at now, which is like $87 million. And a contract like this wouldn't matter because the Leafs could just add another contract like this if they wanted to in a couple years, right? But nonetheless, it affected the Maple Leafs and it got them in a little bit of trouble. They weren't able to add more onto Tavares. They weren't able to go out there and re-sign a Zach Hyman. They couldn't re-sign a guy like Michael Bunting years later. They couldn't re-sign or go out there and sign big-name defensemen, even though now they've started to really rebuild a good blue line, which hopefully we'll see this season. And the contracts, obviously, as this guy gets older, doesn't look fantastic. But what we can't ignore is that Johnny T is only 33 years old. And if we're talking about re-signing him, we have to look at all of the numbers since he's joined the Maple Leafs. Now, I downplayed his first year. He nearly had 50 goals, right? This guy had 88 points, over a point per game in 82 games. Then 60 points in 63 games with 26 goals. 2020, 2021 was a little bit iffy. He only scored 19, obviously shortened season. Everybody had a little bit of a down year. Then nearly a point per game again, point per game the next season, and then last year he tailed off when it came to points, but still gave you that really good goal production. And like I said, the biggest problem has been the contract, and we're seeing it right here. Year 7 of 7. And then before we get into more talk about him, I want to show you this, right? In the regular season, the Maple Leafs had their core four as the top 4 point getters on the team. And in terms of goals, he was the third most goals, right? Johnny T had the fourth most points, and the next closest forward had 47 points in Max Domi, and Tavares had 65. When it comes to just saying, oh, well, Tavares isn't good, we need to get rid of him, good riddance, don't re-sign him, I have to keep showing point totals. The Maple Leafs can go out there and sign a better player than John Tavares next season, and that would be fine. If you're replacing him with a better guy, sure. But what I need people to understand is that extending John Tavares, especially because the cap is going to go up, you're essentially just giving Johnny T that cap increase, but you're also saving the money, right? So let's just say the Leafs get Tavares locked in on a 4-year contract worth $4 to $5 million, which I will add would be an underpayment, because guys that are scoring 30, 35, putting up 60 points are making like $6 to $7 million per season. And if you don't believe that, you can go out there and just look at the contracts given out. Everybody's getting overpaid these days because of cap percentage. Like, look at the deal Jake DeBrusk just signed. I'm sorry, I'm taking Tavares over Jake DeBrusk any day of the week. He's a far better scorer, and he's probably going to have a better contract than that DeBrusk contract ends up. And that's just one option, right? So you have to look at that. If Johnny T sticks around at a reasonable number, then the Maple Leafs, it should be a no-brainer. You got to hold on to this guy and let him stick around. But if we're starting to get into the 6 to the 7 and it's like, oh, well, we'll sign him for a couple years, it won't matter, that's when I'm going to have a problem with it. The question that I'm giving to you guys is, should we sign John Tavares? But I think the question is will they? Because how much is it? And there's been some interesting talk, and I don't want to quote this guy, but I believe Chris Johnston had made it pretty clear that John wants to stay with the Maple Leafs, and I think passing on this captaincy was another just good deed, and like, okay, guys, like, I did this, so like, this is my way of being like, look, I'm willing to make sacrifices, like, I want to stay on this team. Chris Johnston said that he doesn't know if the Maple Leafs have the same feeling about him. They don't know if they want to hold on to this guy. They don't know if they want to keep him on the team, and it is sad. It really is, because I do think that there's a large part of Johnny's game that could still help this team, and I truly do believe that. But after this season, well, and maybe in the coming weeks, we'll have to see if there's conversations. If John Tavares takes a really cheap, team-friendly deal, it's a no-brainer. But if the Maple Leafs are like, look, like, we're only going to be offering you those really cheap, team-friendly deals, I think Tavares probably will have to start thinking about looking at the open market and potentially leaving the Maple Leafs, even though his family's here now. He's built a beautiful home, I'm sure. He's got all of his extended family, I'm sure, around the area. So I'm kind of like, okay, maybe the Maple Leafs are in the driver's seat here when it comes to, we could just get this guy on a cheap deal and he wants to stay, so this is clearly an easy win for us. But I don't want the Leafs to just lose this guy for nothing. They're not going to trade him. It's the same situation as Marner. But again, I'll remind you guys, unless the Leafs have a sure win, like, look, when these guys leave, trust me, this guy we're signing, $10 million, he's going to come here, replace their value, no problem. If they don't have that, you're going to lose 2 out of your top 4 scorers without replacing them. So the Maple Leafs have to be really careful with the next coming year or so. I think if Johnny T's willing to talk and they're willing to sign him to a cheap deal, it makes a lot of sense. But if, again, he's looking for that $6 to $7 million, which, to be quite frank, he does deserve that money. He doesn't deserve 11 right now in this moment. He did when they signed him, but you guys have to use logic here. It can't just be, well, I don't want him, who cares? They have to see if this is a bad or a good option for the team. You can't just have this guy walk and not have a replacement backup plan, because the Leafs have done that before many times and it clearly hasn't panned out yet. Hold on to your good talent if it's going to be a team friendly deal. So I want you guys to sound off. in the comments right now. Will you keep Johnny T? Would you keep Johnny T? What number would he sign for? Also, maybe throw a prediction out there what you think he would get on the open market, because I do believe it's in the $7 million range. It's got to be between 6 and 7. So let me know what you guys think. If you are new here, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Thank you for sticking around at Andrew Piluk Hockey, and I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Peace.